The short answer would be that what if, I'm just presenting another possibility, is that instead of basing our action on remembering the teaching, we, in the opposite way, we forget separation. Because if you start remembering the teaching to act according to the teaching, it's bound to failure. Because at some point we will not remember. And in a situation that's too demanding, the teaching is not going to happen, to come, and then it's bound to fail. On the opposite, if by some grace, miracle, whatever, the sense of separation drops because there is no more belief into that, because it's been explored enough not to be sticking to that, there is no teaching anymore. Teaching is useless. It's to be thrown away. It's just a bunch of concepts that can be useful at some point, but that don't inform our life, because the life is not informed by the presence of the teaching, but by the absence of separation. Second part of the inquiry we could do, after seeing, oh, maybe there is nobody in control. That was the first part. The second part, if nobody is in control, this virtual somebody not in control, does it exist? Because if somebody is not in control, there is no more definition of being a somebody. If
can you repeat that slowly?
Somebody is somebody in control. Somehow figure it out that this somebody who is not in control, is it still a definition, a proper definition that we can apply to somebody? I mean, something that doesn't happen or something that doesn't exist really, is it really something? You see, because we say, oh, I'm the one not in control, which is actually a terrible situation, because it feels like, well, there is life is happening and I'm locked in this body, in this head, and then I cannot do anything about it because I know I'm going to be anyway at the end overtaken by life itself. So it's a feeling of being powerless, but not a good one, because there is a beauty in powerlessness. But this is more like a frustration, utter frustration. Frustration of not being able to express anything, because I'm, at best, I'm the witness. I'm the witness of all these actions. I'm the witness of these hands flying in the air. I'm the witness of these words coming out of my mouth. I'm the witness of the dance, the lila, the dance of life. But is it a reality? Because how would you define something that has no feature, that has no power or no control, nothing, except a concept? So maybe second exploration is to figure out that this specific no doer, the one who doesn't do anything because he cannot, is just a ridiculous idea. It's just a concept. It's just a construct that comes from the residual information from I am the doer. I am the doer brings I'm not the doer, which is another position, which is not comfortable at all. And then there is a possibility, which is transcending I am the doer with I am not the doer, which is there is no doer. So that's the loss. It feels, looking at it from the position of myself, who I think I am, that we are losing something. We get caught in the deal. I mean, there's something that's utterly valuable that's going to be lost. Do you feel that? Well, that's the other aspect. That's the beauty of it. you're right. It is very relaxing. It's peaceful. We are starting to have this perfume of peace that is appearing, because in some ways, like there is the first piece that can happen is that, oh, I'm not the doer, so it's a kind of witnessing state, which is already in a way quite peaceful, because I'm not entitled to decide or do anything. I can see it happening. It's happening all the time. But it's a piece that feels a bit like locked in a tower, in the top of the tower, locked forever in the body or in the mind. Or there's the feeling that I am the witness, it's one side, and there is the world, the happening, which is the other side, and there is a gap. And it's another form of duality. It's dual.
So life is reality, no?
Life is reality. So what is when we talk about illusion, and I love using the word which is a bit different, hallucination, because it's like we are under LSD. We all took a pill, a very strong one at age 3 because that's where it started, and we started dreaming to be an independent being in the body, in the mind, in the head, and we never stopped hallucinating, because it's an hallucination. And maybe I'm here to give you the other pill so that the hallucination stops. But when you hallucinate really in reality, let's say, I don't know if you've done some, I'm not talking the heavy hallucination, but the mild hallucination, the drugs or alcohol or whatever. Understand, I'm not promoting anything here. But you will see that there is a thing that is happening in this room. You might have another level of reality that's appearing. You create something more, which is different sensation, different reality, different interpretation, cross-interpretation between people, and what you might say might be a bit weird, and what you hear might be too weird. So it's an hallucination in a way. But when the hallucination stops, what remains is the room and the people. Well, I'm talking about that. What is happening here is not to create a state of nirvana somewhere on top of the mountain, to be special, to do something special, but just to go back to the room. Tina says that we need the ego to go to buy potatoes on the market and to choose the good one and the bad ones and to make sense. That's your definition of the ego, that's not mine. What I call ego is nothing to do with the natural functioning of life, which takes into account whatever is happening at this time and goes to the next one. If there are potatoes to be chosen, they will be chosen. It has nothing to do with the ego. The ego is the parrot that says, I chose, I chose, I chose. This doesn't exist. Do you see that? The ego never chose anything, because in the first place, this position of entity separated from the world is a dream. It's an hallucination. It's something that has been embedded so much into our system that we believe it's required to choose potato. But the potato will be chosen much better without that, because this hallucination might miss the point on the potatoes, because they might see the potato a bit blurred and take the bad ones and not the good ones. So usually that's the creation of suffering. You have bad potato equal suffering. So that's a good question. I mean, there's always these words that are flying around and that seem quite big and impressive, and actually this feeling of being big and impressive is one of the main reasons why they are not understood properly, because they are put by default into a place on top of the mountain. And then by default, wow, this guy got enlightenment, and this guy or awakening or liberation or whatever. I mean, we can talk about the different wording, but that's again not my intent here to do a treaty on all these things. To try to figure out. Swami Atmananda is much better for that. He will have the proper wording. But how I would define,
Your description.
okay, my description is that if I do that very rarely, but if I go in my own story, which is the only thing we all know, our own story, I met Ramesh Balsekar for a few years, quite short. I was not impressed about these words and these things. That's maybe the positive side of my approach. I was not mesmerized by the whole situation and the Buddha and all these big guys there. I was just looking at the guy. I said, this guy is a normal guy. I had a bit of time to spend privately with him to see he had a normal life with everything plus and minus that everybody has. I said, so this thing about enlightenment is nothing to do with getting a super man or super power or having some extra legs and arms and whatever. So I understood that from the beginning. What I didn't understand, and that's what I said a bit yesterday, is that actually, and that's maybe the tough part to understand, and it's in a way super simple, but in a way impossible to understand with the mind, is what we call enlightenment, and I'm going to define later on, has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do. It's not personal. It's not personal in the sense that when this aspect of life gets revealed, the first information that appears is that it's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with you as you defined yourself before. You're just a normal bloke going to your activities, having the same life, more or less. Yes, there is a change in life. We spoke about the suffering part that can go, and there are more, and it's not something I want to promote because it creates a craving and a expectation, and again, a specialness. I'm into ordinariness of daily life. And to think that I can get enlightened is the first total misconception. It's a hurdle. It's never going to happen to you, to anybody here in this room, and to me. So what is now? Now I'm going to give you another description, a possibility, and try to figure out, try to take it as a game. We're playing together. I'm not forcing anything on you. I'm not trying to impose anything. But what if, for all of us, for all of you, for all of us, all our life, it's been always life happening, and within that, there was a little gremlin called Didier, called Jessie, called Tina, etc. That was just doing its thing, his thing, her thing, here and there, and that has been always the case. Try to imagine now, to remember that you have always been life itself. When I say life, let's define that a bit better. Always been this happening right now, always now. It's now. There is only now. It's now. And then, as this now, there is yellow color, red color, blue color, black color, words, information, senses coming in and out. A dance, a beautiful dance, a beautiful story that goes on. And surprise, within the story there is a little guy that seems closer, because you said that we had yesterday, seems closer here. Oh, there's and it seems, it's a very faint feeling that there is more control here, but it's just almost like a game. There is absolutely no attachment or no belief into that. It seems it's a bit more special compared to the rest, but it's 100% seen that I am life, this life, always been, now, always been, dancing, and never ever been this small gremlin in the corner of this happening. That's what I would call enlightenment.
Who doesn't have the sense of separation?
But that's that's interesting what you say, because you assume that the sense of separation is happening to somebody, and actually it's never happening to somebody. It's happening to life itself. There was only one player in the whole story of your life, which has nothing to do with you, which is life itself, that plays the dream or the game or hide and seek. So hiding brings sense of separation, and life plays, oh, there is a feeling, I am in the body or in the mind and I'm separate from the rest. That's one story. And the second story, which is life also, it's nobody's dream, it's life also, suddenly remembering and then having a big laugh, and then suddenly saying it's a silly game. Actually, it's very tiring. Maybe I'll stop it, and it stops by itself. But it's not, I would say, the achievement or the of anybody. I never had. When I met my last teacher, Ramesh, in Bombay, I felt immediately that if I was there to fight what he had to say, it was the last time for him and for me and for everybody around in the room. Okay, because then I do something else. I'm not here to impose anything, and so there was this acceptance of the message, though the message was unacceptable sometimes, very tough to, especially about the doership. I was a doer. I was a fighter, so it was tough. But the good news about the story, and I didn't do it, it just happened like that, is that I gave up very early in the process, not trying to fight back and trying to imbibe and to honestly, I think the honesty is the big part, honestly try to see what was presented, okay? And that brought a bit more lightness. And then by this lightness, I could imbibe, get a bit more of this information that was getting lighter and lighter. And one day, out of the blue, and it was very abrupt, this sense of separation that was very faint already, more like a habit that was seen in my story, and it's nothing to be repeated, disappeared totally, absolutely. And then it was very puzzling in many ways, because you could also react and say, I'm going mad, and go back into, I have to take care of myself, otherwise. But I was, because of this lightness, because of this bubble, I was not able to recollect and to return to this state. It was too late, it was gone. To talk about whatever can be the bonus or the goodies that you get out of that is a huge misleading information. Because what happens is immediately, I want to get that. I want it for me, myself. And immediately it's back to the hamster wheel.
Also, it can be that it creates this passion to...
You're right. That follows a bit what Beatrice was saying yesterday. There is this utter kind of desperation. Okay, I cannot achieve that. It's out of my reach. It's out of my potential. It's nothing that I can do. It's grace, let's say. I give up. So that's desperation. That's a feeling of loss, of losing all hopes, including the spiritual hope of getting awakened or whatever. So that's one side of the story. The other side that we were pointing yesterday was about this utter burning passion for it. It's a paradox. It's a total paradox. Because without this burning passion, the story doesn't go that way. You see? So how come a burning passion can be non-personal? Now, a much simpler definition of awakening, the simplest of all, is that awakening is when seeking stops. Okay? Honestly, not like, oh, I got it, it's okay, but still I'm going to read another book, or just in case I missed something and all that. That's seeking going on. It's just playing fool with yourself. Okay? But if in a whole total honesty, the second I understood what it was about, the next second I would never, ever, ever open a book in my whole life or watch a video or whatever, because it was ridiculous. So in a way, at some point, I took a book I took I am that from Nizagadatta and just opened randomly to see that and to see if there was a relation what he was saying. And what I was reading before, and let's put the thing like that, before was a bit harder, but making some sense, but not totally making sense. And after, I was reading that and say, ha 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 ha, this is so evident, so basic, so ridiculous. Why did I miss that my whole life so far, you see? So, then you close I am that, you put it in the shelf, and then after you have the termites eating it because you will never open it again in your whole life. It's not required. So that's the second definition I can give. But that's another trap, because in reality, what you're doing, you're telling two stories here. You're telling the stories of Tiru and the story of Mexico, which is actually the same life happening, and it's the same reality happening, but it's been read in a different way. And the reading that's happening is that you start with an assumption that is unexplored, which says there are several people around me talking to me and giving a sense of closeness, of intimacy, of brotherhood, and etc. And that feels nice. Okay, so you create in the story elements, and you play with them, and create and then deduct a specific outcome. And then in Mexico, there is again this division of the thing, and you say the opposite. They say, well, there is it's not happening, but both of them are hallucinations. So Tina says that awakening might be also this feeling of lightness when there is no more burden of the weight of separation and it's true. But here, this definition, I don't like it. It's an accurate description. I can say yes, but I don't like it because it gives some hope, some thing that the so-called virtual separate entity is going to be seeking for the rest of his life.
To feel the light.
Exactly. Exactly. The grasping. We are always we exist because of the grasping. Without grasping. Hmm?
Grasping and
rejecting, yes. Grasping and rejecting, you're right, correct. Yeah. Grasping means basically acquiring something, acquiring enlightenment, acquiring being better, acquiring some special state, some less suffering, less pain, more pleasure. So it's rejecting what we don't like and taking what we like. And that works very well in our life, because if we deal with within the story of life, that's the way we choose our potatoes, that's the way we choose anything. We prefer ice cream, vanilla taste instead of chocolate, and that's part of the thing. But if we apply that thing that seems very natural, very logical to this search that we're doing right now today, we are bound to failure. It is bound to failure. The fire by itself can be also totally misleading. It becomes the warrior of light, the one who wants to know, the one who wants to get enlightened, it becomes something that is a spiritual goal, spiritual attainment, specialness. Okay? So if I introduce playfulness into that, it uses the fire in a playful way, and it kind of avoid the trap of taking that seriously while being utterly serious about it. Do you see the possibility here? It's really. So here is a possibility to go. Okay, we are going to finish soon now, but to go out of this room with this fire, but at the same time with this possibility of playfulness, of falling in the cracks at some point, and not caring about it and laughing about it. And because we have been informed, we might not have the fear triggering and resisting to that. That's the information that's useful in this case. this possibility would be happening by surprise. You see, because if there is if it's the conclusion of something that is going to be prepared, it's another action of the mind and the separation. So it's realizing suddenly that something is missing, and something huge. And actually, it's so huge that the paradox shows that not only it's huge, but it never existed in the first place. So it's a huge dream, actually, huge hallucination again. But it's more by surprise, actually. So, my dear friends, that's it for today.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure as usual. Well, I'm not doing that. Compared to Ragi, I'm a total amateur. I do that very, very rarely.
And some people are moved to share and others not.
Correct. And it's not my. It's clearly not my role in this life. And I wrote a book about it. It's in French, so there's no hope for the for the other ones. But that's all. It's about it right now. Maybe.
Can change tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not going to happen soon anyway. So who knows?
It's not for you to decide.
Thank you for telling me, because I tend to forget every.